like being leader in the round tonight. Have to keep moving. I can't sit still long enough to talk, so I'm going to stand up tonight. I'm just going to tell you my story. It's interesting. I get into universities or other places where everybody has some kind of a degree of some kind, and they're all lawyers or something. And you have to know I'm not an expert on anything except my own story. And so that's what I'm going to share with you tonight. And my story began, it was October 1st. I didn't feel sick, but I felt something was wrong and I had no idea what it was. It's just, have you ever had one of those funny feelings?
Oh, yeah.
You have, good, Paul. Well, so I decided not to go to lunch with my friends at work that particular day, and instead I went home to lie down for a few minutes. And the minute I walked in the door, the phone rang. And I picked up the phone, and the voice at the other end of the line said, "Well, what do you think about Catherine being shot?" I said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Well, haven't you heard? Catherine's been shot." I simply hung up the phone, picked it up again, and redialed and called the Placer County Sheriff's Department. And I said, "This is Gayle, mother of Catherine. I hear she's been shot. Where is she? How is she? What hospital is she at? I'm her mother. She needs me." I was frantic. The voice at the other end of the line obviously didn't want to talk to me. And what he said was, "No, ma'am, your daughter hasn't been shot. But I'll have someone call you right back." And I paced from room to room, and I was in a stage of probably temporary insanity, not knowing what was going on. And I had what I would consider an out-of-body experience, where my body was moving, but my brain had just shut down. And finally I looked up at the wall, and I looked at the clock, and 3 long hours had gone by. And I picked up that phone and I called the Placer County Sheriff's Department again, and I said, "This is Gayle, mother of Catherine, and if someone doesn't call me this, I have to talk to someone right now or I'm going to lose my mind." Finally got passed along. I got Sheriff Detective Landry, and he said, "No, ma'am, I'm so sorry to tell you, your daughter was not shot, but your daughter is dead. Your daughter was murdered." And when I heard that voice, I started my journey of darkness. Catherine was 19 years old. She was my youngest child. She was my baby. When Catherine died, I was very alone, and there were a number of reasons for that. My mother had just had open heart surgery. She had a mitral valve replacement, and she was so fragile, and I was so worried about her that I could not share my pain with her for fear that I would lose her too. So I had to protect her from my pain and keep it to myself. My husband, who was actually Catherine's stepfather, came to me 6 weeks after she died, and he said, "I don't want to talk about Catherine anymore. I'm not going to mourn her the rest of my life." And I had no one in my home to talk about Catherine with. And it wasn't that he didn't care about her, because he did. He loved her a lot. And I've learned since then, people mourn in different ways. And there's no way you don't judge other people for how they mourn. But at the time, it left me very, very alone. My 2 older children, my son Lindsay and my daughter Elizabeth, had just left that fall to go off to medical school. My daughter down to University of California in Irvine, and my son to Marquette University in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. They were a long way away. They had worked so hard to get to this point in their education. There was no way that I could expect or ask them to come home and be with me. And in fact, you have to remember, that it was their little sister who'd been murdered. And they had to deal, not only being brand new students in medical school, but mourning their own little sister and her death. And it did affect both of them a lot. It was very hard for both of them. I went through all the normal stages of grieving. And for example, one of the stages in the very early stages, crying. You know, it's really normal to cry. Oh, I cried a lot. I cried whenever I was alone, because for some reason I was unable to cry in front of other people. And at some level, it was as if I felt that I didn't want to impose my pain on anyone else. So I had to keep it into myself. And you know, for quite a while, I couldn't drive a car, because I'd get in my car and I'd start to cry and I couldn't see. You know, another thing that we do in grieving, and we all do this, we go through the different stages in different ways, but it's denial. You know, we forget. Our minds can't wrap around some things. They're just too awful. You know, and I would find myself, I'll tell you about one example. I was walking through Macy's. Now, this was in Sacramento, in California. And I was walking along, and I saw a rack of dresses. And I looked at that rack of dresses, and it was the absolute perfect blue. The blue that Catherine looked so darling in. And I took the dress off, and I looked, oh, that's a size 6. That would fit Catherine. That's perfect. I'm going to get it for her. She'll look so cute in this. And then I remembered, I didn't have Catherine anymore, and I had to hang up the dress. And my shopping was over for the day. I had to go home. Another stage of grieving is anger. Anger is normal, and it's actually necessary. And if it's done in a healthy way, we get into our anger, we really, really feel it, we get through it, and we come out the other side. And that didn't happen to me. I got stuck in anger. And I was in such anger that I look back now and I wonder how I survived that. Because that kind of anger and rage permeates every cell of your body. It permeates all of your family, all of your friends, every place that you work. It is absolutely destructive. And I got stuck in that anger and rage for 8 long years. Now, I'll tell you why I got stuck. The district attorney came to me and he said, we're going to find the person that did this. We're going to find him. We're going to put him on trial. We're going to find him guilty. We're going to put him on death row, and we're going to execute him. And when he is executed, then you're going to be okay. And at the time that Catherine died, I had no faith. I didn't have a church. I didn't have a church community. I didn't have a priest or a rabbi or a minister or someone to come and help me through all of the pain of this. And so I believed him, because I could call him anytime and I could talk, and he'd be glad to talk to me. That anger and rage lasted for about 8 years. And then some things started to happen in my life, totally without plan. I don't want you to ever think that I sat down and said, I don't feel like this is a good way to be. I want to change. It didn't happen that way. But I guess there are no accidents. But my dad had died, and my mother became too ill to live alone anymore. And so my marriage fell apart, which often happens after a child has been murdered. And I went to live with my mom. And I was always looking for things to bring my mother joy, because she didn't have a lot of years left.